Hi, my name is Greg Vesley, and I want to thank you for joining us here on Perspective, where we're giving encouraging words and sharing real life stories. Today's show is called Don't Stand Still, Be a Neighbor of Change. Life is always defined by its moments in history, and what we do with those moments can define us or bring change in our lives. The Bible tells us in Luke 10:27, it says for us to love thy God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second greatest commandment is for us to love our neighbors as ourselves. So, what kind of neighbors are we? Are we the ones that people run from, or do they run to? Are they moved by us, or do they want to move from us? Are we bringing the change needed in our communities, cities, or in our workplaces? These are questions we need to answer. Being a good neighbor is important. Why? Because we can bring change in someone's history that can alter the course of someone's life for the good. We are all someone's neighbor. Let's not stand still, but be an agent of change. Today, my friend DJ Vincent is going to share with us on how they have made an impact in their community by being a good neighbor to a people group most shy away from. They got involved in helping meet the needs of these people by recognizing and meeting them right where they are at. Let's go to today's show and hear what DJ has to say. Hey, DJ, welcome to the show. We're so glad that you're here with us on Perspective. Why don't you say hi to the audience and kind of tell us who you are?
Yeah, it's such an honor to be here, especially in these times. I get to be a pastor in Salem, Oregon, as well as help lead a foundation called the Salem Leadership Foundation that connects people of faith with people of goodwill for the peace of the whole city.
Yeah, so you've been in the community for how long there in the Salem area?
Yeah, my wife and I felt called here 17 years ago. And we've done church planting, and now we're doing, community organizing and connecting.
Yeah, I know you and we've done a few projects together, food pantry, different outreaches and stuff. But one of the things that I was always impressed is a ministry that you started or a part of called Church in the Park. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Church in the Park?
Yeah, some of the best things, happen by God's design and not our design. At first, I thought I was just volunteering one time to interview some folks experiencing homelessness in a neighborhood we were trying to minister to. Those folks really, opened my heart and mind, and I invited the rest of our congregation to do a one-time potluck in the park. That was the goal. And after we did that potluck, a woman in our congregation stood up and she read Luke 14, where it says, when you host a luncheon or a banquet, don't invite your friends or your neighbors. They'll invite you back, you'll be repaid, but invite the poor, the crippled. And in this way, you'll be blessed. And she shared that that day was the first day she'd ever been obedient to Jesus's words. Mm-hmm. And she called out to us and said, we need to keep being obedient to this passage. And we committed at that time, 13 years ago, to stay obedient. And we've been, staying obedient in that direction. And what was a one-time potluck right now is a meal 6 days a week, and a ministry of relationship and prayer with those experiencing homelessness.
Awesome. Well, we have this video that we're going to go ahead and show, just kind of showing the audience exactly what you guys do and the impact that you guys are making. So let's go to this video.
I think I'm here for God to work on me. Emmaus was prayerfully looking at how God might expand our ministry in South Salem, and so we pulled together a weekend we called Serve Salem, and we intentionally visited and helped serve at 5 different ministries. We were also taking a fancy bus tour of the whole city with Sam Skillern and the Salem Leadership Foundation. But the capstone was a potluck we had planned at Cascade Gateway Park. So many people may know it's a great place to play frisbee golf. It's a great place to take your kids fishing. But I had no idea that there are people living in the park. When another church called Ecclesia heard that we were doing that, they wanted in on it. And each of us realized, you know what? We could take our potluck each month that we would have as a church anyway, and we can go and have that at the park. And so Emmaus took 1 week a month and Ecclesia took another. The more that we shared meals, and the more that we heard stories, and the more that we saw lives being transformed, we realized we had a lot to learn about ministry. I was sharing about what was happening at a Can Center meeting, and Craig Oviatt pulled me aside and he asked if West Salem Foursquare could come out.
Well, we saw this article in the paper about the Dream Center in West Salem, and we recognized Craig Oviatt. Long story short, we ended up getting a phone call that there is an opportunity to go serve at Cascade Gateway Park.
We found out that they needed help with coffee because it was a little cold or there wasn't enough, so we said we can do the coffee.
We started a fellowship with Ecclesia and Emmaus. It was kind of like this is the way church should be. So the more we went out, the more we served, the more we knew this was our call.
And then it was in our minds that, okay, they have a meal twice a month. Maybe they could have a meal every week.
So within 4 months, we had 4 different churches partnering in the park. There was Emmaus and Ecclesia, but then Outward and West Salem Foursquare had joined us. It was at that point that we started praying, who in our group is called to be out here every week? Mark and Kathy Walker felt a call from God that they were supposed to come into a new season of life, that this was going to be their church family. Church at the Park was born.
So people think the homeless are lazy, they don't want to work, alcoholics, drug addicted, thieves. We've learned that they're just like you and me. All they need is someone to walk beside them. All they need is someone to hear their stories, really. We're available and we hunt down these resources. Then we take people to Social Security appointments, get their IDs, birth certificates. We take them to housing appointments, doctor's appointments. We end up visiting people in the hospital.
You mentioned before the video that you got started with this scripture, right? It just kind of really hit you. How did you really get started and what was the vision? Walk me through that. I know that something, impacted you, but how did you, it started out with one meal, but how did it get to where it's at today?
Yeah, so our tagline is a banquet of love and acceptance for those who need it most. And what we realized is, there's a lot of agencies, there's a lot of organizations, programs out there, but what people need most is friendship. And specifically, we call it spiritual friendship. Someone who is going to contend with them through the ups and the downs, to just volunteer to pray with them, to kind of ride the journey that they're on, and through that, we're able to really build trusting relationships, that don't demand people join our program or change this week, but we're really walking beside them for a life of change.
It sounds like you're really getting back to something just so basic in its relationship. And I imagine that people that you're serving there, they might be in that place because of broken relationships and have been hurt in the past and so forth. How have you, beyond food and sharing a meal, but how have you been really intentional about just bridging that gap and and earning the trust and
Mm.
building those relationships and those friendships.
Yeah, that's so good. So right now we have 8 different churches that partner with us. And what we ask at the very beginning is that folks will commit to be regular.
Mm-hmm.
That the people who are going to come out with a meal one time would come out again and again to show that they're really for the folks, and
Mm-hmm.
they're in it for the long haul. And kind of like you said, it's super basic, but there's a lot of money that gets invested by the community in housing or new jobs. But who's going to walk with those folks? Oftentimes through filling out the paper application. Who's going to walk with them in getting to a meeting, or asking them how the meetings are going, how the application is going, and really just letting them know that they matter. Because like you say, there's a lot of broken family relationship, which is understandable. People have had a rough time. They've been traumatized, or they've made some bad decisions.
Yeah.
But we have to believe that God still has a good plan for them.
So good. And you're right. We can set up systems and processes, but systems and processes don't work. People do, right?
Mm.
And so you can have the best intentions, but if you don't have somebody to walk hand in hand, it's not nearly going to be as effective.
Yeah, I believe that, people want face to face, right? Hand to hand. People want to know how much we care before they want to know how much we know. If we show them how much we care, then they want to know what we know. And DJ, I see that over the years that you've really lived that out effectively, where you just met people's needs and build those relationships. And through that, there's been many stories that I've heard of people's lives changing, not just as in financially or getting a job, but really a radical transformation through Christ, because you've introduced that and you've been Christ to them. It's been pretty amazing. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed also is that you've been a good neighbor, right? You live in that community, you've been a good neighbor to those people that are in need in your community. How would you define that, though? What does it mean to be a good neighbor, and what does Scripture mean by that? We read it in Scripture, right? It says for us to love our neighbor as we love ourselves.
Yeah, you're sharing, stirred in me that part of it is, seeing those who are unsheltered as our neighbors. And I was really mentored in this work by Father Gregory Boyle out of LA in his work with gang members. He has this saying, when person A, which is oftentimes a person from the church, helps person B, it's actually person A who's getting better. So how do we make every person person A? And so we started saying, these folks that we're serving, they have incredible capacity to serve. And they understand the pain of what they're coming from and experiencing. And if we ask them to help others, they'll actually be the most effective in the work. So right now, in the things that we do, meals, food boxes, clothing, about 50% of the folks who are the volunteers are actually, either coming out of homelessness or are in need of services right now, are a part of our safe parking program. Just this last month, 2 individuals who are carpenters, living out of their cars in our safe parking program, completely remodeled one of our rooms into a new laundry room. Again, just asking them, seeing their value and saying, how do you want to be a part of this ministry? How can you give back?
So wait a minute. We don't just hand things out.
Yeah, that can really divest people of their personhood and their power, and make them it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, that folks, just want handouts. If that's all you're offering, if you're not offering true relationship, if you're not offering a place at the table to serve and lead, that's just what you're going to get.
How long does it take to transition from, hey, I'm here to serve you, to I'm asking you to serve alongside?
Yeah. The last week we were walking through the parable of the four soils, and, we realized that, we're meeting people at different points of their journey. And so, like you said, we might have a process, but someone who's coming and joining us for a meal for the first time, God may have them just ripe and ready to serve. There is a couple right now, I've only known them for 3 weeks, and they might be the next leader of our food pantry ministry. They've just jumped in, and they're giving 20 hours a week to organizing food boxes. And so I think part of what we try to do is say, this is a ministry that is here for you, but we want to do this work with you. And most meals and times we serve, we invite people to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, so good.
I guess really what it comes down to is you have to provide the opportunity.
There
right?
it is.
So if you don't have the opportunity, well, then it just becomes more of a handout. But if you give them the opportunity, people will stand up and rise up to that. And I know that's something you taught me when I was there in Salem when we launched our food pantry there, that people just started serving. And it was just because we provided the opportunity. We didn't treat them like they're just receiving a handout, but letting them to give back, right? And that's what people, I think it's in our human DNA, we want to give back, right? We want to help, and we just need the right opportunity to be able to do that. Yeah. So with all that's been going on, with the craziness in the world in the last, few months, how are some of the things going, and what are some of the things that you had to do as a ministry to pivot, right, during the quarantine, the pandemic? I'm sure there was a lot of need out there, because I know a lot of governments were trying to figure out, what do we do with this people group, right? What do we do? We can't shove them in houses. We can't, what do we do with these people? So what are some of the things that you guys did, and some new things that birthed out of that?
Yeah, Greg, we were so fortunate to just feel like, God had us in the right spot at the right time. COVID came, we were at the time offering a warming space for up to 80 people a night. And essentially, due to COVID restrictions, we had to stop that. But the city immediately partnered with us on a safe parking plan that I was able to share with other churches who had, parking lots available. So right now we have the capacity on a given night to safe park, almost 100 people. And then the reality is many food banks in our city needed to shut down because their whole volunteer workforce was in the vulnerable category. But in our case, because over 50% of our workforce needed the service and was experiencing either homelessness and living in their car, or homelessness and living out of a tent, we just put all the distancing and disinfecting practices in place, and we just went from serving about 3 meals a week to 6 because we were there. We were in place. The systems were there, and a lot of other places couldn't operate. And so we got more support from local restaurants, more support from other churches, and we had the volunteers trained and ready. And our team did a great job of, updating our practices. It does break our heart that we don't get to sit down and break bread, that we give out boxed meals, but it still feels meaningful. And we went from about 60 meals served each time to 120 right now. So the need has definitely gone up as well.
Wow. So you're not only providing food, but you have the safe parking, uh, which is utilizing church parking lots as a place
Mhm.
where those who are living in their vehicles can stay. And what are some of the other needs that come along with that? I mean, having a place to stay overnight and park your vehicle without being harassed is important, uh, but there's got to be more to it. What else are you guys doing along with that?
Yeah, like I mentioned, the spiritual friendship is the goal, and so voluntarily people can provide us their numbers, and we try to connect them with people who are willing to, we call it, take on 5 folks to
Okay.
pray for and to connect with, what services are needed, what opportunities are you hoping are going to happen. We call it the science of hope. So people need their motivation encouraged, they need their goals clarified, and then they need real options for those goals, real
Yeah.
pathways. And sometimes people don't know that there's so many options out there. So we're kind of, we call it like navigators, where we're pushing people to opportunities that they
Yeah.
didn't know were there.
Yeah. You know what I think that's so good, because as you talk to people who are impoverished or hurting, you'll realize that it's not just it's not just a condition they're in. Sometimes they really do lack access to resources, and oftentimes they don't even realize that those resources exist. And so what you guys are doing by being able to introduce them to that and even paint a picture is huge. So good job on that.
Mm.
Do you have some stories about specific people who may have really been impacted? You've seen some victory, some breakthrough in their lives, and turnaround. What does that look like?
Yeah, I know that for a lot of folks, 2020 has been a super hard year.
Right.
And for us, we felt like, it's been the year where, the good works that we've been trying to do are coming to fruition.
Mm.
I took a sabbatical in 2019 and felt God really telling me, you need to tell the stories of the folks there at Church at the Park. It's been 12 years.
Hmm.
And before I could even start writing, a photographer out of Portland that works for Adidas, connected with me and said, I feel called. I've heard your story. I want to, take the portraits of the folks that you guys have been working with. And another one of his friends,
Hmm.
put came down with me, and I did interviews with 20 of our folks. So what, could have been, pretty typical, the guy in charge writing about all these stories. All of a sudden we were able to put together a book called The Humanity of Homelessness, that is actually, 20 stories straight from the folks whose lives are being transformed.
Mm.
And you asked about a specific person, a gal that we've only known her for just over a year now, but last year about this time she started coming to meals. We invited her to a women's retreat. Her name's Kelly. She felt loved in that place, and made new commitments to follow Jesus. And then she just kept saying, what can I do, what can I do? Right now, twice a week she organizes everything for our food boxes. She When we were doing overnight warming, she was a lead of other community volunteers.
Wow.
And this was a woman who was, for the whole first year we knew her, she was living out of a tent. Now she has an apartment. She's a leader in our work.
Mm.
The cool part is this: is there's a lot of organizations that shut down during this time, and you guys really arise to the occasion. You know what I mean? And you guys saw the need, met the need, and you're already positioned that way. And that's kind of the way God works, doesn't it? He knows what's coming down the line. We don't know, but he knows. And so he positions us and bursts things in our hearts, right, to meet those needs and to really hold his banner up, right? This is what I'm doing for my people. But out of that, there's been some opportunity too that's presented itself. I know we've been in conversations about some land. Why don't you tell us about the land and the vision behind that?
Yeah, out of being a good neighbor and relationship, we've been using a community hall that is right by a city park that actually the city right now has declared in their state of emergency that homeless individuals can camp in that park. And so there's a 1 acre piece of property right by that park, and the group that we've been leasing it from is essentially they've said we need to sell that, and you guys have first right of refusal, but we'll do what we need to do. And so we feel like God has put us there so strategically. The property is literally connected to this park, where there's several hundred folks who need the relationship we're offering and the opportunities to see their life differently. There's a building on the property that we've basically been using as a navigation center for meals and clothing, and now laundry. And so the whole property, it just seems like the right thing that we would purchase that this year. And they're trying to make us the best deal they can at $300,000, and we're going to be asking the community to help us purchase the land and the building.
And so if you purchase the building and the land, it's going to further some of the ministry things that you're doing, but also you have some vision where they can stay on the property. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first step is, it offers the safe parking. And then during the winter months, it's a warming center location. And then, we don't know the future. It's a large swath of parkland that, the city deemed was one of the best spaces to allow homeless individuals to be in this state of emergency. And we just think it's strategic, we have a strong partnership with the city. And so we don't know if it looks like this mitigated safe camping that they're trying to provide right now. Twice a week right now, we offer a program with the city called Cash for Trash, where to build relationships, we offer $10 gift cards for a bag of trash from their camp to offer a kind of sanitation service, encourage them to keep their camp and the park clean. And, they sign in and, start the relationship and learn about other ways that we can help them. So we could see that only expanding with this strategic location.
Yeah, so this piece of property is pretty pivotal and, and strategic really for your ministry, right? To be able to continue to do what you guys are doing, to expand, to reach that people
So
group
you guys
even more.
are poised to expand here, and your ministry that you're running, the church as well. How have you engaged your local church there in the process? Because you're a leader, but you have a lot of people who just come alongside. They grab a hold of the vision. Are they? Tell us a little bit about how they've been involved and engaged in it. Because what I think is many people who listen to this here, or watching and hearing your story, would love to be involved in something along these lines too. So talk to us about that kind of engagement.
Yeah, there is a richness of partnership and not rivalry with the other churches in the city, because they recognize, some of the folks that we're ministering to used to be in their neighborhood as residents and will be in the future. And so, right now I mentioned there's 8 congregations that are regular in terms of showing up, providing a meal, knitting into relationships of prayer and support. And, they've got that warm handoff. And we celebrate when folks connect with other churches, even though we're trying to build that, you can volunteer here as a unsheltered individual. We'll care for you with a men's group, a women's group, Sunday services. We celebrate every connection to another church. And so there's those 8. And then we have 20 strong financial commitments from other churches for regular operation, as well as folks who will help us with this capital campaign. And we do an event each Christmas called Room in the Inn, where it's really an event that the whole Salem community is able to participate in, where we have about 300 volunteers from 25 or so churches make it happen.
Yeah. What's something that you would say, DJ, to our audience that's out there? Maybe there's some pastors out there, individuals, about just being a good neighbor, how to serve their community. What would you encourage them? What would be the first step? What would be something that you would say to them?
Yeah. So the first step is always seeing that individual as a person with a longer story than just holding a sign or living out of a tent. There have been tragic things in that person's story that has put them there. And so can we see that? Then, can we hear, can we get close enough to kind of hear with vulnerability how we might be a part of their transformation, of the next chapter of their story? Can we hear how we as an individual could encourage them? We as a church could come alongside. It's kind of one by one, couple by couple. That's why I'm so excited about this safe parking opportunity. Churches can only accept 6 cars. And so it's really, just a few folks that they could get to know and begin to pray for, and, see them, get a new job, celebrate them getting into different housing. And so that's what I would say. It's not about taking on 100 folks. It's about seeing one person.
Yeah, and really, I believe stepping out of our comfort zone sometimes. I think sometimes it's really hard, for some individuals, because they don't know what to do. It feels uncomfortable. They don't know how to approach, but you just have to do it in a loving manner, not coming there feeling like you need to shove something in their face as a handout, but really hearing their story. I know that I've learned over the years that if I just listen, I find out some amazing things, and even things that I may have prejudged aren't exactly what I thought it would be. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So I think that sometimes we're guilty of that, is prejudging. Well, maybe they're alcoholics, or maybe this, or maybe they are because of tragic things in their life, or maybe they're not. Maybe they just fell on, bad times. We don't know the story until we hear the story. And I think that's the important thing, is to hear the story and meet them exactly where they're at. And that need could be just listening. It could be seeing that they need something. Maybe it's a jacket or a blanket or whatever it is, and not just shoving it to them, just understanding what the need is. And you meet that need, right, through loving channels, us being loving who we are and who Christ is in us. And we meet those needs through loving channels, and it's for his glory. When he's glorified, all of a sudden we see transformation take place. I would say more in me when I do those things than the individual. And even though it impacts an individual, I know I've in the past going to Mexico or doing certain things, I'm thinking, okay, I'm here to help. What I don't realize is really what it's doing to me. And I'm realizing, oh, you know what, this is impacting more me maybe than this individual, because God is showing me something and doing something in me. So it's important, isn't it? It is. What's some words of encouragement that you would have during these uncertain times for our audience as we're wrapping up?
I would say, this is a perfect time, whether we're talking about COVID or racial reconciliation. Jesus shows us the way. As you were just sharing, he's the one that came down from heaven with complete humility. He's the one who, makes himself available to the most vulnerable, whether we're talking about people in poverty whether we're talking about being willing to, bend a knee and get close to women experiencing harassment, or whether it's, being willing to touch and get close to people who are different and outcast and marginalized at his time. He shows us the way. This is not the time to, abandon the ways of the church because we've been imperfect. This is the time to, look to the one who is perfect, in the model of Jesus, and to realize in humility that we can still grow as his followers. And he's going to show the way to a better tomorrow.
If people wanted to get involved in the ministry or donate, right, to help with the land, because you're going to be reaching out to the community and you're going to need some help. You're a nonprofit organization. I understand how that works. You have to raise funds to be able to get things done. And I know there's some people out there that are willing to help, but you also need the community's help. How would they give or get involved or get in contact with you?
Yeah, like most folks, our website is sharpened up and all updated, telling about everything we do, how to get involved, how to give to the capital campaign, and how to give on a regular basis. Like I mentioned, we do have the book of the folks' stories that we were able to publish, and so the sale of that will be used to fuel the ministry, and so we feel like God has put us in place to allow others to partner with us.
Well, DJ, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on the show where we're giving, encouraging words and real life stories. There's God's perspective and then there's man's perspective, right? And God sees things differently. His economy is different than this world's economy. And sometimes we just have to be reminded, right? Who we are as his children, the things that he calls us to do, how he's called us to be the hands and feet, to be tools and instruments in his belt to further his kingdom. And you're doing that, which is his rule and reign in people's lives. So I want to thank you for that, DJ. Thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Thanks. I want to thank you guys for joining us on today's show. I hope that you were inspired by the things that DJ shared with us today. I hope that each of us have an understanding what it means to be a good neighbor, and that we wouldn't just stand still and stand by, but get involved and being the change agent that's needed in our communities, in our cities, and even in our workplaces. I hope that you have a blessed week, and make sure that you join us on our next show at Perspective. And share this on your social media pages and whatever social media platform that you use. We're looking forward to seeing you next time.